Good Friday morning and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Ted Rollins in for Julie Grant. Glad to be with you as we round out another busy week here at Court TV. The New York shooter that killed CEO Brian Thompson is still at large, believe it or not. This is one of those cases you're thinking, oh, they're going to get that guy. No, he is still at large. We're going to have the latest on the investigation from Manhattan. But first, as we always do, let's take a look at the daily docket.
The court is not yet in receipt, but will be in receipt of a stipulation as to the defendant's competency based on the written reports here by Dr. McGady, dated November 7th, 2024. Dr. Webster, dated December 2nd, 2024. Stipulation having been accepted, the reports having been considered, the court finds the defendant understands the proceedings, is able to assist counsel in her defense. The court further finds the defendant competent pursuant to statute. It is ordered affirming prior release conditions, and we'll get you a new date in front of Judge Boreski so you can proceed in your case.
All right, that was in Arizona, and this morning, Lori Vallow will be back in court after she was ruled competent to stand trial on Thursday. We could find out if she's going to represent herself. That status conference begins 10:30 Eastern Time. In Mississippi, we continue to watch testimony in the missing student murder trial for Timothy Harrington. That's at 10 o'clock Eastern, and a new trial we're following here at Court TV, the van life and death trial for Joseph Ferlazzo, accused of killing his wife. While on a trip to Vermont to celebrate their first wedding anniversary, opening statements in that one, 9 o'clock. We'll be watching that together when it begins. But we want to start in New York. Our top story, new details this morning. Investigators say that the gunman who shot and killed UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson traveled to New York last month on a bus that originated from Atlanta, Georgia. We also, of course, know that the gunman wrote with a permanent marker the words "deny, defend, and depose" on the bullets used in the shooting. Investigators say those words could refer to insurers delaying payment, denying a claim, and then defending their action, a long-held practice in that industry to build profits while they break people's hearts, some say. The manhunt still underway for the assassin. Police say the gunman used a fake New Jersey driver's license to check into that Upper West Side hostel, and that is where we find Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft outside the hostel in New York with the very latest.
The manhunt continues for the man police say shot and killed the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, Brian Thompson. The investigation has brought authorities here. It's called the High New York Hostel. Police have executed a search warrant here because they believe the suspect was staying here prior to the shooting. Police have released photos of the suspect. He is not wearing a mask, and this is from when he apparently was staying at the High New York City hostel, where he shared a room with 2 men, according to authorities. Detectives are canvassing other hostels on the Upper West Side, showing workers photos of the suspect and asking if they have seen him. A few minutes prior to the shooting, the suspect was at this Starbucks, just a block north of the shooting. The Washington Post has obtained surveillance video of the suspect buying a bottle of water and 2 power bars. A cell phone was also found along the escape route. We're going to continue to be here in New York covering this story and bring you all the latest details as they become available. Reporting from the Upper West Side of New York, Kelly Craft, we'll send it back to you.
All right, well, thanks. Kelly should be with us throughout the day. And of course, if there's any developments, we'll pass them along. Let's talk about it. With us this morning, criminal defense attorney Don Malarsic and former special agent and supervisor at the Department of Homeland Security, Dr. Jason Piccolo is also with us. Good morning to both of you. Jason, I want to start with you. The movements now from the shooter coming from Atlanta on a bus, November 24th. Stays at this hostel. At first, people thought, oh, gosh, they're going to catch this dude in like 10 seconds. New York City police, you've got the cameras everywhere. Are you surprised that here we are, day 3, and the manhunt continues?
It's like finding a needle in a haystack, though. So if he fled the city and he's out, and we don't know if he's north, south, east, or west, you don't know where he's going to be. And to find one person within 330 million people in the country is going to be pretty tough. So it is on to law enforcement. They do have a great composite sketch of him, but they also have pictures of him, which is solid. They have his movements. They know what he looks like. They have his build. It'll be a matter of time, but he will be caught because, you know, the great thing about social media is his picture is everywhere.
Yeah, and if you know that guy, you're going to recognize him immediately. And, Don, the beauty of this one is apparently the reason that photo is out there of him smiling is because the person at the hostel, a young woman, said, Al, let me see your smile, because he had been there at the hostel with everything covered up. And sure enough, a little flirtation with the gal behind the bench or behind the counter there may have help this case along massively, because you look at that picture and it's pretty clear of who this is, Don.
Yeah, it's really the clearest piece of evidence that we have so far, and it's going to be plastered everywhere. As soon as it became public, it's all out there. And as you said, somebody knows this guy. I would imagine we're going to have a name attached to this individual, hopefully by the end of the day, certainly by Monday, I would expect. But there are just treasure troves of evidence to look for. This burner phone, even though it's a burner phone, it's still going to have contacts. It's going to have text messages, communications, calls, internet searches, tracking movement. The water bottle can contain some DNA. There was a fingerprint apparently lifted. So I think they are really zeroing in. The search warrant at the hostel is going to obtain potentially DNA, potential fingerprints, interviewing the roommates. What did he say? I think we're really, really close to identifying who this person is and then catching him really quickly.
Jason, do you think they already have an ID on this guy and it is a matter of just finding him? I mean, he used a fake ID, obviously, to check into the hospital, likely did that on the Greyhound bus as well, and possibly purchasing the firearm. But that photo, you would think, would spark immediate reaction from the public, and given the media attention to this case, someone knows this guy.
Someone does know him, and you did bring up the point that this photo is out there. They may know who he is, but law enforcement's going to keep it close hold until they could track him down. You never want to tell them that you're coming to get him. So they, for their security, for their safety, and for the law enforcement out there in the field doing the investigation, they need to hold this close. They don't want to put out the identity of this suspect until it's the absolute, until they absolutely have to.
There's about 3 miles between the hostel and the hotel outside of that Hilton where he was, where the assassination took place. And apparently he's using an e-bike. The first reports were that he was using one of the city bikes. You always see those in every city where you have, you can just pick up a bike and go. Now it appears as though surveillance video shows him carrying a bike for a period of time at some point. This was well thought out. I mean, people have debated, is this a professional hitter or not? And a lot of people, no way, this is professional. Don, it was well thought out, was it not?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this screams premeditation. From leaving in Atlanta, using cash to pay for your bus ticket, using the fake ID to check in, the burner phone, the disguises, the mask, the hoodie, all of that screams premeditation, screams he's really, really thoughtful about his getaway, when he was going to target this individual, how he was going to target him, writing on the bullets. I mean, this screams premeditation. This is something this individual has thought about and obsessed over for days and weeks, if not months. And
Jason, it also screams that his goal was to get away with it, not to go down in a blaze of glory and send, have the bullets marked, but have everybody see him and hear his story. His goal was to get away with it. What does that tell you? And now that we're into day 3, do you think this is possibly a professional hit? Or do you agree with many others that think that it was not?
You know what? I was in the city, in that area the other day when this assassination occurred. I was there visiting. And you need an e-bike. You need to get around. You need to escape. And he thought that out. One thing people don't realize is that you don't have to be a professional to be an assassin. Assassins do exist. They exist all over the place. Look at Mexico with the Sicarios. It really does happen. They really do exist. Was this professional? He does have, obviously we have a picture of his face, so that's unprofessional. He had tunnel vision when he shot the victim, so he was so focused in on him, not concerned about witnesses. But yes, this was a professional, in a way, hit, but it was an assassination, exactly.
Do you think, Jason, he's a dangerous suspect right now? I mean, how dangerous is he in this capacity during this manhunt?
Absolutely. Flight or flight risk all the time. You know he's armed. You know he knows how to use a weapon, and we don't know if he has other weapons involved with this and other co-conspirators as well.
And that's a good point, because where's the bike? Where's the backpack? How did he get rid of those things? And as this evolves, Don, that'll be an important part of this whole equation.
It's a huge part, and it's hard for me to believe he was acting alone. I mean, he had some inside information, it feels like, about the calendar, about the schedule of the speakers, about the hotel that the CEO was staying at. I mean, that's not common knowledge. The CEO was not staying at the same hotel where he was speaking, the exact time that he left his hotel. So it certainly feels like he wasn't acting alone. And that's when that burner phone can really provide some essential clues to the FBI and local law enforcement.
Absolutely. Who was contacting him? And it's just hard to get your head around that. While people are saying, well, it wasn't a professional hit, it was so thought out. It wasn't just a willy-nilly guy reacting out of pure emotion. It was, there's something there. And we'll see what happens today. Every day, there's more information coming out. Dr. Jason Piccolo, thank you so much for your valuable time. Enjoy your weekend. Appreciate your time as always. We're going to get a break. Coming up next on Opening Statements.
It is our sincere hope and prayer that Brad will find the compassion and courage to end his family's suffering by cooperating with the authorities to help us find his wife.
New developments in the search for Suzanne Simpson DNA on a saw that her husband, accused murderer Brad Simpson, allegedly tried to hide. And later, a man who was wrongly convicted 42 years ago for the rape and murder of a little girl is going to join us live, tell us his story. He's telling it through a brand new film. Stay with us.
Tonight on Court TV.
I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. We have a big hour ahead here.
Your deplorable actions are unforgivable.
The community still doesn't know how this Boston police officer died.
He can't prove one element of his case.
It was a dramatic day, a dramatic moment inside the courtroom.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan. Tonight at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Trending in true crime today, the murder indictment against the husband of a missing Texas mom, Suzanne Simpson, reveals that her DNA was on a handheld electric saw, which was seized by police. The mother of two has been missing now for 2 months. Her husband, Brad Simpson, is facing several charges, including murder. Here's Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas with more from San Antonio.
Well, good morning, Ted. Of course, we know Suzanne Simpson went missing earlier this year in October, and the big news this week, her husband, Brad Simpson, has now been indicted for her murder. The indictment came down on Tuesday, December 3rd, ahead of what was supposed to be an examining trial coming up on the 9th. That has since been canceled. I reached out to Brad Simpson's court-appointed defense attorney this week regarding the indictment. He told me he had no comment at this time, but he did let me know he filed a motion to quash the indictment on Wednesday. I also received this statement from the Bexar County DA's office regarding the indictment, saying in part, "We extend our deep sympathies to the family of Suzanne Simpson as we move forward in the pursuit of justice." Brad Simpson's brother, Barton Simpson, has also been vocal regarding the investigation into Suzanne's disappearance.
This helps us come to terms with the reality that Suzanne is no longer with us, allowing us to continue the difficult process of grieving and focus on rebuilding our lives for the sake of the children and our extended family.
He released this statement on Facebook following the indictment, saying in part, "We urge Brad to do the right thing by fully cooperating with the authorities. For the sake of his children and the family who loves him, we ask him to accept responsibility and place himself at the mercy of the court." And Ted, of course, police have released that affidavit outlining the mountain of evidence that they say they have against Brad Simpson, and we'll continue to monitor the new developments in this investigation as they come out. That's the latest from here in San Antonio, Texas, Ted. We'll send it back to you.
All All right, our thanks to Cody. Cody will be there for Monday's hearing as well in this case. It's a horrible case. You have this husband that apparently took his wife's life, according to the evidence, according to the state, and you have his family basically saying, dude, come clean and help this process move forward. That's how much potential evidence is there, but there's no body. So is this the evidence the prosecutors needed, the SAW, the DNA? Here to discuss, criminal defense attorney Don Malarczyk is still with us, and criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Joe Tamburino is with us. Good morning to you, Joe. Happy Friday. This case is, it's a heartbreaker because we all know she's dead. This is a mother, a realtor. This is not a woman that is off vacationing somewhere with another life, has another life going. She's dead. What does the DNA tell you in terms of the strength of the case against the husband, despite the fact it's at this point a no-body prosecution?
Good morning, Ted. Thanks for having me on. Well, it's a strong case so far. I mean, think of it this way. She disappeared on October 6th, and the next day on October 7th, they have evidence that Brad was driving around with a tarp that looked like something was under this tarp in the back of his pickup. In fact, he had something weighing the tarp down, and he was driving around from, say, 11 a.m. to about 1 p.m., and when he went back to the area at about 1 p.m., the tarp was gone. And then they have the indictment that says he was hiding evidence, basically, of this type of saw, a saw that's pretty powerful that could obviously cut through wood, bone. It's a reciprocating type of saw. And now we know that the saw has her DNA on it. So unless he's got some type of evidence or arguments that possibly her DNA was transferred on it, you know, since they knew each other, they obviously had a relationship. Her DNA might be on him and he transferred it to the saw. Unlikely, but I would say at this point there's a lot of evidence against him.
Don, if you're representing him, I get your job is to represent your client, and that everyone deserves great representation. But when you have the client's brother out in public, in front of the microphone saying, listen, help us, just come clean. We know you did it, dude. Do you address that with him at all and say, you know, there is one thing we could do here, or how, you really can't, can you? People may look at the defense attorney in this situation and say, can you talk some sense into him? But is that your place?
You know, it absolutely is. And I don't know that it's my place to talk some sense into anyone, but what I have to do is really explore trying to resolve this case. The stakes couldn't really be higher. He's charged with murder. These are really significant, serious crimes. And as I'm detailing the evidence, discussing it with my client, talking about it, hearing his thoughts about it, we're also really actively trying to find some kind of a resolution. Can we possibly plead to a lesser charge? You know, quite frankly, the reality is if this person did it, he has some valuable information that he could use to try to get a better charge. Maybe a manslaughter. If he identifies where the body is, that provides some closure to the family. So you're trying to do your job and resolve this case. You really don't want a trial on any situation, so you're working hard to get some resolution, and he does have some leverage here that might work a favorable plea. So that's exactly what any good defense attorney would be doing right now.
But Joe, when a case has the public's attention, like this one, it's hard for a prosecutor to agree to any deal. But to Don's point, there's no body here. Do you think that they are discussing this in trying to resolve it now to find her?
I'm sure they've made overtures to do so, and I agree with Don. I think there are some cards to play. When you have a body that's not been found, you know, it is important for closure to get that kind of information. So he does have that card to play. I mean, there's a lot of evidence against him. I mean, you know, we even have, I don't know if this would be admitted in court, but we even have Suzanne's words or discussion with her banker where she says, if I'm missing, basically, you could blame him and look in a lake for me. So, you know, obviously there was some type of abuse going on here. But he does have cards to play. If he knows where the body is, then he could use that to try to get some type of a deal.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know about the strength of his hand at this point, and I don't know about the public's appetite of him getting anything less than a life without parole, if not the death penalty, because it's despicable what's alleged here, if indeed he's guilty. Let's move on to another case that has the country's attention. It is also in New York. There's still no verdict in the subway chokehold manslaughter case. Jurors return this morning. It'll be day 4 of deliberations. Daniel Penny, accused of killing 30-year-old Jordan Neely after putting him in that chokehold on a New York subway. He suffered from, Neely, schizophrenia, was high on drugs, and was shouting death threats at passengers at the time of this incident. Thursday, jurors wanted to review the defense cross-examination of the medical examiner who performed Neely's autopsy. They also wanted to watch the video again, not just the witness video from inside, but also the body camera video of Daniel Penny afterwards, and they'll be back at it. They will be back at it. What is happening here in your estimation? Joe Tamburino, you first. What do you think? I mean, this is a case that's divided the country. Makes sense it might divide a jury.
Absolutely, and especially in the situation in New York. I visit New York at least once a year, and for the last 3 or 4 years, there's a significant change in the terms of, crime on the street and homelessness. New York has some issues. It's still a wonderful city, so I don't think you could, and any jury could divorce itself from the fact that these things are going on out there. Now, Mr. Penny, when you look at the video, could they find him guilty of some type of negligence crime like the recklessness? Sure, they could. But I think what they're doing is they're hung up on it because, they know that this gentleman decided to take the matter in his own hands and then put this person in a chokehold. And I think the jury's going to think, did he go too far? Did he put the chokehold on him for time that was unnecessary? So I think that's what they're, grappling with.
Don, your thoughts here? Is this going to be a hung jury, or do they come to a conclusion possibly today?
Boy, it's sure started to feel like that, Ted. I mean, we are at day 4. I think Joe would probably agree. My experience is juries don't really want to come back on Monday and stay out over the weekend. So I think today is going to be a crucial day. And my prediction is that they're either going to have a verdict or they're going to tell the judge we are hopelessly deadlocked. This is the kind of case that if you try it 10 times, you can get 5 acquittals and 5 guilties. It looks like and feels like what happened here is you got those jurors mixed up and you might have 6-6 split. It's going to be a really difficult task to have all 12 people unanimously agree one way or the other. And this is just really, I will tell you personally, just a really gut-wrenching time for the defense attorney and the prosecutor. You can't really do anything. You're getting these questions. You're trying to read the tea leaves and figure out which way the jury is leaning. These are the worst days in any defense attorney's life, just sitting there helplessly after 2-3 weeks of trial, waiting for the jury to return a verdict.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine, and the defendant too, because you're just, you can't, you're overthinking it. Well, what do they want to see this? They want to, why? And of course, then when it's all over, if you do talk to jurors, you find out all the things you were thinking was not what they were thinking. But it's something that we'll be watching throughout the day. Don Malarczyk, thank you. Enjoy your weekend. Joe's going to stick around still ahead on opening statements.
They knew it. They knew they had the wrong person, and they didn't care.
That's something that David battles with every day.
People telling David, just admit that you've done this, and you'll get out. And David says, no, I can't admit to something I didn't do. I'm not going to lie.
A live conversation with the man centered around a new film, 42 Years for Nothing, detailing how he was wrongly imprisoned for 42 years. And who is telling the truth, boy? Did you see Melody Farris yesterday? It was a sentencing that we'll never forget. Blaming her Scott as the real murderer. We'll have a language and body language expert in to assess what she said.
I saw you coming from that burn pile the morning of July the 5th in your truck.
Fair.
All units information, possible homicide at 6901 Broadway.
My
first few months in jail, I honestly felt that someone had made a mistake and they would find out the truth that it wasn't me.
Police are investigating the rape and murder of 8-year-old Karen Smith.
Police say David Bryant has confessed to the crime.
I was in there for 11 and a half hours being questioned by officers. And he said, well, you know, if you want to get out of here, you just got to sign your name. I did never read the paper, and I signed my name.
David was innocent. That's what had my hair on fire.
42 years for nothing. A new film that highlights the 4-decade journey to freedom for David Bryant. Set to a motion picture is breaking this case. Basically, DNA broke this case. This morning, we are the voice for victims, as always. Who's the victim here? David's journey is unbelievable. The DNA breakthrough, which freed him from a life behind bars. This was David Bryant the day he was arrested for the heinous murder of Karen Smith, an 8-year-old little girl, raped, stabbed to death at a stairway in a Bronx apartment building. This guy was enemy number one back in 1975. People thought he was responsible. Well, David is a free man now, exonerated on all charges he faced from that crime, not only after spending 40 years behind bars. Let's bring in our guest in studio, director and producer of this new film, 42 Years for Nothing, Lana Adams, and remotely, David Bryant is with us. David, good morning to you. This journey that you've been on, people can only imagine. Talk, if you will, about what was going through your mind during this period of time where you were innocent and you're sitting behind. Did you think that, oh, this is just a big mistake, or were you confident? At what point, or if at any, did you sort of lose your fight and think, oh gosh, I'm going to be here the rest of my life?
I never gave up hope that I knew I didn't do this crime. This was something I knew I didn't do, you know what I mean, without a doubt, no matter how they put the hat on me to make me believe that I did it, I didn't do it. And I said I would die first before I ever find myself in that situation. And that was what I was committed to.
In your case, you were freed from prison, and then you ended up going back 14 months later because they kept coming at you. And what was that moment like when you were handcuffed again and you were headed back to prison? How difficult was that and how demoralizing?
Well, I knew the first time that they let me out in 2013, I was actually innocent. You know, the law, what they would say, I proved that I was innocent. And I had faith in not just me, but the system that if they know the truth would set me free. Going back was not a problem because I really believed that they heard it the first time, we'd do it again, and we did.
And you'd done enough time to be comfortable with what you had to endure, I'm sure. Lana, tell us about what we're going to learn from this film. What stands out to you as, I mean, it's a story that has been told before, but it's a heartbreaker on all levels. Yeah. What should we expect if when we watch this?
I really want people to take away David's hope and perseverance, like how strong he was to be in prison for that long. And there were several times he went to the parole board and they said, hey, just admit it. And he never did. He never said he did it. He lost his entire family. They all passed away while he was in prison. And the whole time he still maintained his innocence, even when he could have gotten out earlier if he had just said that he did it. And so I think I want people to take away to never give up and stand 10 toes down on what you believe in. It's just a reminder to do that.
Did David, was there a moment where you would have been released likely on parole if you just admit what you did scenario? And was there ever a temptation to do that?
Nah, never. I was going to the board after serving 25 years to life. And when I went at 25 years, it made me eligible for parole if I just admitted that I did it. And I said, I know I didn't do it, no matter what it would take. I'm not gonna say I did it. And I went to 7 parole boards.
You're emotional even now. Why?
Because it'll always be touching in my life. It'll always be part of my life.
What is your life like? You lost your family. You came out to the outside. How difficult was that transition, and how are you doing now? Well, what are you doing now? Give us a sense of your day-to-day life, and mentally, how are you coping? Because it obviously is not easy.
Through my perseverance of just being me and fighting no matter what for the right things, I felt that I wasn't a teacher. I didn't have nothing great going, but I would want to just pass it on, the goodness, the fight that I have in me. And I use that now as a motivation to keep me going each and every day, from my dog right on up to people and everything. So that's pretty much my job, just trying to keep myself going and just be happy with the moment that I have now in my life.
Was it a difficult transition?
Very, very difficult. I mean, I try to help others and assist others with that transformation of what it's like to come out of prison and restart all over again. It's a tough moment. It's hard.
I can only imagine. Lana, Karen Smith, the victim in this case, who killed her? And what has that family, I mean, I know that family was ripped apart by this horrible, horrible crime. Talk to us about Karen Smith.
From what we know, we don't know still who did this. Karen's family still believes that David did it up until this point. There was a young boy, Billy Tyler, which people will see in the film, that was Karen's friend, that was forced into a false confession to say that he saw David with Karen and he saw him do it. And that came out later, and Billy Tyler has since recanted, but they didn't even use his recantation in David's case.
And the DNA, just so people are aware, this was a test, a blood type test, which pretty much rules him out, rules David out. Yep. His attorney didn't ask for that basic test back then. This all could have been avoided. But everyone is, outside of the victim's family, is on board now here that David should be out. Prosecutors as well have come to this conclusion because of this evidence.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it was very clear once the DNA came out that David did not do this, but because of prosecutorial misconduct and people trying to kind of cover themselves, they did the wrong thing, made the wrong choice, and left someone in jail for a very long time.
David, does it hurt that Karen's family still believes you did it?
Well, I can't say what they would feel, because even as me thinking as a victim, I'm a victim. I know it's hard. I know it's hard on the family. I do know the family. I know the two twins. I was part of knowing their family. And, to know this day that there's no resolution to know who really did this, it hurts me just as much.
That's well said. David Bryant, thank you, and your story is a motivation, yes, to always keep going and don't lose hope, because I can't imagine not losing hope in what you endured. Lana, we're now to the point of you've produced the film. It's film festival time, I guess, right? And then it'll be distributed after that?
Yes, that's the goal. We've entered a few film festivals. We're waiting to hear back. We'll be hearing back through the spring. And then the goal is to get this on streaming. And then eventually we would like to produce a scripted series based on David's story.
All right, thank you both. David, thank you. Lana Adams, thank you. The film, 42 Years for Nothing. We're gonna take a break, but before we do, take a moment to remember, as we do on this show, the victim in this case, 8-year-old little girl who was brutally raped and murdered. Her killer never brought to justice. Let's get a break, and we'll be right back right after this.
Coming soon to Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering. He is the boogeyman. Lori Daybell. She said, I will have you destroyed. She's got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
We will not stop fighting. We have no quit.
Sean Diddy Combs arrested on a federal indictment.
The high-stakes trials you don't want to miss. Coming soon, only on Court TV.
Time for tipping the scales. The Farris wheel of family drama came to a head in the sentencing in the burn pile murder trial when convicted killer Melody Farris blamed her son, Scott.
Not only did I not do this, I know who did. I know Scott killed his father. He took my husband, the father of Chris, Emily, and Amanda.
Scott was in the gallery, shaking his head back and forth while Mom read her statement to not only the judge, but the world. The judge sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole. She's expected to serve 30 years minimum. She's not going to outlive that. She's already 60, I believe, 3. We're asking, do you believe Melody Farris? Did she tip the scales in her favor with this elaborate sentencing diatribe? She went on and was very detailed in some of the things that she believes points to Scott's guilt, her son. Let's talk about it with criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Joe Tamburino and body language expert and senior instructor at the Body Language Institute, Rodney Smith. Rodney, we're waiting to talk to you. I know what I think. I think she was telling the truth. After a while, you're listening to her, it's like, oh, this is coming from somewhere down deep, and or she's absolutely off her rocker. What did you see when evaluating, let's start with Melody, on during the sentencing hearing? Oh, Rodney, you got me?
Oh, yes. Oh. Sorry, I had a little bit of a delay. Sorry.
No problem.
So, obviously, whenever she starts off with her statement, she says that she wrote this. And based off the fact that she makes that statement indicating that she actually wrote the statement, the information that she put in there, she truly believes. A lot of the times when we look at from baseline to change, we see differences and changes in her tonality, her voice inflections. She's making direct positive accusations. She's making direct eye contact with her son, Scott. She's making eye contact with the judge. She comes across as very credible and believable in the information that she's presenting. And I think at this point, she's actually, for everyone else that has been listening, to include the judge, I would say she did a really good job of creating a level of reasonable doubt.
Joe, we watched this trial, and it was no slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of people thought she would be found not guilty before the jury came back with their guilty verdict. What did you think of Melody at the sentencing, and how does it affect her case one way or another, or at all?
Well, it's too late, and it doesn't affect her case. I agree with Rodney. She came across pretty well during all of this, but she should have testified. I think we talked about this before when we were watching the trial. She had an opportunity to testify. She could have gotten on that stand and even went into greater detail than she did at the time of the sentencing. So it's too late. It's not going to affect her case at all, and she should have testified.
Well, she did say, Joe, I wanted to testify. My attorneys advised me not to. Is that going to be part of an appeal here, ineffective assistance, or no? Because the judge colloquied her.
Well, ineffective assistance is very difficult to win on in an appeal. It just is. Because when you get down to these calls as to whether or not, say, an attorney would call a witness, whether the defendant should testify, whether this witness should be cross-examined, these are basically calls that an attorney makes, in conjunction with talking to their client during a trial. And almost always, those types of calls will not be considered ineffective assistance if they wind up being the wrong call. So I doubt, she might raise this on appeal, but I highly doubt she's going to prevail on it. The bottom line is that when you have information like this, you are the defendant and you talk to the attorneys. Of course, you give them, what your opinions are, and they're going to give you advice. But with powerful statements like this, she should have just testified. And I'm surprised her attorney said not.
Yeah. Rodney, let's listen to more. Melody, I want to see what you see.
I saw you coming from that burn pile the morning of July the 5th in your truck. You told me that you were checking on the fire to make sure that it wasn't going to get the woods on fire. You told me it was okay. I asked you a few weeks later why you were at that burn pile in your truck, and you told me that your dad had told you to clean up the extra wood that was by the barn.
Rodney?
Yeah, so once again, in this area here, which we refer to as the brow area, we see signs of grief. We see those inner eyebrows going in with an upward pull. And while she already has a downward produced area of her mouth here, we see that in conjunction, and we know from the universal micro expressions as well as macro expressions, those are areas of reliability when it comes to producing sadness. So she comes across as credible because she has that movement, which is a very difficult movement to make on command. If you were to try that yourself, to contract those muscles to be able to have that inward and the upward pull in conjunction and in tandem with the frown more so than a pout, it comes across as very credible. She's very well composed in that chair. She's not doing a lot of unnecessary movement. She's actually seeming very relaxed, and she feels, and she's presenting herself in a manner that I know what I'm talking about. She believes what she's saying.
What about Scott? We've got can we play the sound real fast and then a quick assessment with yes or no if we believe him? Now,
did you murder your father?
I absolutely did not murder my father. Without a doubt, I loved him.
Did you have anything to do to help your mother dispose of and burn your father?
Absolutely not.
Tell me, not me.
No. Rodney, do you buy him?
Well, without having a great amount of information, I do believe that he loved him. I do believe that he had some form of a grief muscle in showing. He did give a qualifier at the beginning. Instead of just saying no, he came out with an absolutely not. And a lot of times, not saying that that is indicative of lying, but he is actually trying to produce information that says, I unequivocally did not have any place in my father's murder.
Fascinating stuff, Rodney Smith. Thank you for your insight. Joe's going to stick around. At this point, Melody Farris is off to the state penitentiary. Scott is free. Did the jury get it right? We'll get a quick break. Our new trial is next.